The room was buzzing with tension, officers moving papers and exchanging quiet whispers, but all eyes seemed to gravitate toward one man. A broken-down veteran, barely making ends meet, stood stiffly at attention, sweat trickling down his temple. He had seen battlefields most people couldn't even imagine, yet here he was, in a plain uniform, facing a room full of high-ranking officials who didn't know his story. The colonel, a stern figure with decades of service etched into his face, leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "What's your call sign?" he asked, his voice calm but heavy with expectation. The veteran's lips tightened, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to pause. He could feel the weight of every gaze in the room. Years of missions, impossible rescues, and moments that tested the limits of courage flashed in his mind. Then, in a voice steady but quiet, he said, "Hawk 8. The reaction was immediate. Conversations died mid, chairs creaked as officers froze, and the colonel's jaw tightened, his face draining of color. Everyone in the room seemed to hold their breath, waiting for what would happen next. Who was this man really? And why did a simple call sign carry such power, fear, and respect? No one dared speak, and for a few heartbeats, time itself felt suspended. The answers were coming, but not yet. And in that charged silence, a story was about to unfold, one that would reveal courage, secrets, and the kind of bravery that only few had ever witnessed. The colonel's eyes narrowed, scanning the veteran from head to toe, as if trying to measure the weight of the man's history by his worn boots and faded uniform. Hawk 8 wasn't just a name, it was a symbol, one that carried stories most in the room could barely imagine. Rumors had circulated among the officers for years. Missions that went unreported, operations that never made it into official files, acts of courage that blurred the line between legend and reality. Yet here he stood, a man who looked ordinary at first glance. With nothing in his appearance hinting at the storm of experience beneath the surface, the veteran shifted slightly, trying to appear calm, but his hands betrayed him. Clenching and unclenching as memories surged forward, he remembered nights in hostile territory, the roar of engines overhead, and the calls of comrades in danger. Each call sign carried weight, and Hawk 8 had earned its reputation the hard way through countless missions where lives hung by a thread and decisions meant the difference between survival and disaster. Whispers began to ripple through the room, barely audible but electric with curiosity. Who had he worked with? Which operations had gone so deep that no one outside the unit would ever know? Even the colonel, a man who had seen decades of military action, seemed caught off guard. The tension thickened, and an unspoken question hung in the air. Why was a veteran of such skill and renown now standing here, broke and forgotten by the world outside the military? The colonel finally broke the silence, his voice low but carrying authority. "Hawk 8, we need details. Now." The veteran's jaw tightened, not out of defiance, but from the weight of what he was about to recall. He knew that once he spoke, there would be no turning back. Secrets long buried, missions left unspoken, and the lives of comrades lost, everything pressed against his chest like a storm ready to break. Around the room, officers shifted uneasily. Some whispered to one another, speculating about what kind of operations could earn a call sign like Hawk 8. Others stared in disbelief, realizing that the man standing in front of them had been part of events so classified, they weren't even on the record. A young lieutenant in the corner glanced at the veteran with wide eyes, clearly sensing that this was more than just a simple briefing. Meanwhile, Hawk 8's mind drifted back to a mission that had defined him, one that had gone catastrophically wrong, but also revealed his capacity for ingenuity under pressure. He had been alone in enemy territory when everything fell apart. Decisions he made in those moments had saved lives, but at a cost he carried silently for years. Now, the same faces who had once only seen his call sign on a report wanted the full story, unaware of the toll it had taken on him. The room was a mix of anticipation, awe, and tension. Every officer was silently weighing the implications if Hawk 8's story came to light. It could rewrite the understanding of past operations and shake their trust in the official records. And yet, the veteran hesitated, knowing the truth could also put him and others at risk. As he took a breath to speak, a faint knock echoed from the door, pulling everyone's attention for just a moment. Something or someone was waiting outside, and in that instant, the tension snapped tighter. The story of Hawk 8 was about to collide with forces far beyond the walls of this room. The knock at the door was subtle, but in the charged silence of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. Every head turned, every heartbeat seemed louder. Hawk 8's eyes flicked toward the door, and for a split second, a shadow of recognition crossed his face. The colonel's hand instinctively moved toward his notes, but he didn't speak. No one dared. Whatever or whoever was outside carried a presence that demanded attention. The veteran swallowed hard, the memory of past missions pressing down like a weight. He had faced danger in deserts, jungles, and cities under siege. But this was different. This was inside a room filled with officers who expected control and discipline, yet now the control was slipping. Hawk 8's story, the one he had kept buried, was about to intersect with a new threat, one he hadn't anticipated. Whispers started again, quieter this time, almost like the room itself was holding its breath. The young lieutenant shifted nervously, glancing at the veteran, sensing that the man's calm exterior was only a mask. Behind Hawk 8's steady eyes, a storm was building, memories of ambushes, betrayals, and the kind of split-second decisions that could mean life or death. The colonel leaned forward, his jaw tight, knowing that what was about to be revealed could shake not just the room, but the entire chain of command. Then, without warning, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped in, someone whose presence alone made the veteran's stomach tighten. Recognition, fear, and adrenaline collided in an instant. Hawk 8's mind raced. One wrong move, one word, and everything could collapse. The tension snapped taut, every officer frozen in anticipation. For a heartbeat, the world outside and inside the room seemed to disappear, leaving only Hawk 8, the colonel, and the silent promise that what came next would change everything. The story teetered on the edge of revelation, and no one knew if it would save them or destroy them. The figure in the doorway didn't speak. Instead, a single envelope landed on the polished table with a soft thud that echoed louder than any gunshot. Every eye followed the movement, the tension in the room doubling. Hawk 8's hand twitched slightly, a reflex born from years of survival, but he stayed still, forcing his calm. The colonel's face grew pale, his fingers tapping nervously against the table as he studied the envelope. Something about it screamed urgency, and even the seasoned officers sensed that this was no ordinary message. Hawk 8 recognized the seal instantly. It was from a mission long buried, a file that had been classified at the highest level. Memories surged, ambushes, coded transmissions, comrades lost in silence. Whoever had sent this knew exactly how to provoke him, to stir the ghosts he thought he had left behind. The envelope was more than paper. It was a warning, a key, and a trap all at once. The room's atmosphere shifted again. The younger officers exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that Hawk 8's past was not just legend, it was a living, breathing threat that could change everything. The colonel's voice, now strained, finally broke the silence. "Open it," he commanded, though even he seemed unsure if he wanted the answer. As Hawk 8 slid his fingers over the seal, a subtle tremor ran through the room. The tension was suffocating. Outside, the faint hum of a helicopter grew louder, a reminder that danger wasn't confined to this room. And as he tore the envelope open, the words inside made every officer freeze, the kind of words that could unravel missions, reputations, and lives. In that moment, it became clear. The story of Hawk 8 was no longer just about a veteran or a call sign. It was about secrets that could ignite a chain reaction, one that no one in the room was prepared to handle. The stakes had just gone higher, and the real test of courage was about to begin. Hawk 8's hands moved deliberately, pulling the contents from the envelope. Inside were photographs, coordinates, and a single line of text that made the room collectively hold its breath. Asterisk Operation Falcon Shadow compromised. Immediate extraction required. The colonel's eyes widened, the years of experience suddenly clashing with the gravity of the situation. For the first time, the officers realized this wasn't just a briefing, it was a live, ticking crisis. The veteran's mind raced. He had trained for moments like this, but nothing had prepared him for facing a betrayal so close to home. Names from past missions flashed before him, missions where trust had been everything. Hawk 8 knew what had to be done, and in a calm but commanding voice, he began issuing orders. Every officer, from the youngest lieutenant to the colonel, listened. They moved with precision, following the veteran's lead, as if decades of unspoken respect had finally found its moment. Minutes stretched into an eternity, as Hawk 8 guided the operation. His knowledge of enemy tactics and secret art